All right, so this video is a quick one to just bring everyone up to speed of where I'm at with the designs. So what I've done in the last week was gone through two solution validations around what we might be doing with displaying branch rules. Um, Initially in the designs and solution validation direction, we were taking a look at whether we should display things as a simple view of just like the name and like a way to view the details. And there was some ideas of showing that there might be two matching branches here. And there was a question of whether we should include more in addition to that. More means in an extreme kind of scenario, we would go and present something like this where we would have all the details here, but if we go down this route, then we need to think about how we might incorporate this with our editing experience as well. And if we do go there, once we include editing, will it be in here or will we have a separate page to handle editing? Through a little bit of design and just thinking about things, I landed on this approach here of displaying the name of the branch and whether it's the default or protected. And just so protected means if the sets any settings around who's allowed to merge or push, that would mean that's a protected branch. And then we could simplify the listing to just show any checks or approvals required to that. Part of the solution validation was to look at whether we go with displaying the details or going with the simplified approach here. The difference between this one and this one here is just removal of the extra details. We have people who prefer the simple layout because they understand that if they wanted to go understand deeper, they just click details and have all that, and it's less information at the start. So in the spirit of progressive enhancement, I feel like this could be a good direction to move forward. And if we do get feedback that people wish to have some kind of summary when we roll this out, this would be a perfectly acceptable approach, which I feel is less intense than this approach here. So we would go with something like this, using mono-space typing here, so that if we're using wildcard patterns, it shows up like this and it's clear, versus going with just the normal type and then the asterisk could be up in the sky or wherever, and it just doesn't look as cohesive. And this pattern of having the default and protected is something that we use within branches. So if you go into your project and you go into repository and you click on branches, then you'll see a listing of branches like this, and you have default and protected. So I think carrying that from a learnability standpoint makes sense. And a future consideration would be like linking to the rules directly from the branches. Now that we've organized things by branches, it might be a nice way to connect the two worlds from product to settings. But that's a future consideration. Next question is, what do we do when we click into details? Previously, details was this, where we took kind of like a summarized view of protected branches, and we call that protections, and we have merge request approvals here, and then further down we have status checks and things like that. My first stab at this was just taking what's there and then creating a read-only view for the view, and that takes us to this view here. Looks okay, but there was one area here where I kind of got stuck, and I realized is this part here: one role, two users, one group. There's no way of me expanding or understanding what this might be, because in this world here, it was a drop down, and if you opened it, you would see things that were checked or not checked as your role, users, and groups. And I realized that we had this pattern down here where we're displaying approvers as avatars down here. The whole fact that we have like two different ways of editing and managing displaying users is part of the reason I'm very happy that we separated this MVC to display rules and edit rules as separate activities, because then we can tackle these things when the time comes to create a holistic experience. So here, to resolve this, I decided to go down with let's just list everything, and we get into this was the first one that I did a solution validation for, and here we list the roles, users, approvers, kind of using this box paradigm, showing the matching branches, so you don't have to click to go somewhere else to see matching branches. But you know, if we need to get this out by just having a link to view the matching branches, that's totally fine as well. Because that's the current behavior that we have right now. In solution validations, when people saw this and compared it with the existing protected branches view where we have all the toggles and the drop downs, people found this harder to parse initially because it was a lot to take in looking at this, and I sympathize with that, because if you're scanning this, initially I thought this was a good design because you can just scan roles, maintainers, users, but you have more people in here, it actually doesn't work really well. So I moved it over into this this layout here where we have like roles and whatever that may be, and any users and all users that are selected there. And if you have roles as well, or groups, I mean, if we need to, if we can separate that, that would fit well in here where you have roles, groups, users. And from a scannability standpoint, it follows this paradigm here of our approvers, and you know, is consistent. And this kind of layout would also work with status checks where we have something like this, a health check or whatever checks that we have there. It would lay out nicely and consistently. Since this is viewing the branch rules, and you know, if I wanted to make changes to this, we're not exploring the edit experience right now, but we want to direct them to where they could go to handle edits. And I tested the experience of clicking on this button and taking you to the current protected branches, or clicking here to go to merge request approvals, or clicking here to status checks. Participants found that experience easy, and it matched their experience. They either expected a more detailed view or like a pop-up, and that's in line with where we're thinking about editing in the future. One could argue whether this button should really be a link because we're linking them to a page. This is a detail, I think, at this moment, whether we want to use the buttons or a link. I feel like the links get lost in here, but semantically it's correct because we're linking them to a page versus an action. But I think over the next few days I can refine that decision out. Yeah, so for example, if you click on merge request approvals, it'll pop you to wherever merge request approvals are. Whether we can scroll them directly to the section, that is something to be determined, I guess, because we don't have anchors on the page at the moment, but perhaps if that's something that we could include, that might be something we can consider. So just to recap, yeah, we are changing this edit view to look more like this for viewing, and I have other explorations around how this translates to editing as well, and I think it provides a cohesive experience between editing branches and approvals, and changing the name from protections to protect branch to keep that idea of protected branches close. Yes, I'll update the issues with designs and everything tomorrow, along with a summary of the solution validation.